Yeah, understand.
I really enjoyed when you mentioned the purpose of examples or of analogies. You said that they are only used for visualization. They have their limitations, but in the end, they are not going to prove anything. They are just aids.
Yes.
Wonderful. And, I truly enjoyed the idea of praying, because it actually helps me be responsible for what I want. And even though I did things in the past, I can actually pray for those things. So it's like it's a safety net, let's say, or it's a fail-safe. And that's it for me.
Nice. Very good.
In addition to this, the prayer part, I feel the surrender to the power, and where you will actually be in a way cared by someone, and so cared in the sense not how to explain. It's more of like, okay, you try whatever you can. Okay, so it's not that you don't do anything and you just want Ishvara to do it for you. It's not that. But you have tried it, and then, okay, now you leave it on Ishvara. So that total surrender is something that appealed to me.
Yeah. See, the surrender, the word when we use, we have to be little bit careful, because the minute we use a word surrender, almost appears an uncle or auntie to whom we surrender. So that is not, see, one thing that the way Swamiji used to put this, I thought I really liked the way he put it. I loved it. And it's a similar idea, right? Helplessness is a reality of life. We try to keep pretending that I'm not helpless. When you acknowledge that you are helpless, and at the same time don't enter into pitying yourself as a result of that helpless, or overcompensate to show how strong you are. When you are just authentic, accept your helplessness and ask for help is what we call intelligent living. And you can ask for help to different people also. Please don't take that right. But the others themselves are limited in their capacity to help you. They are equally helpless. So there is only one place where you can actually unload your helplessness is Ishvara, which is all knowledge and all power, which is in form of all the laws, which actually, it's not that the laws are going to change to accommodate your helplessness. Please understand that. Right? It's not like, oh, I'm going to give you some goodies because you have done that. The laws are going to remain what they are, but what you have done is, by adding one act, what have you done? What have you done? You have changed the configuration of outcomes. So what it means is, suppose 1 plus 1 is equal to 2, I add one more variable, which is 1 plus 1 plus 1. Will the result remain 2? No. It has to change. Why it has to change? It's in keeping with order. Do you understand? It's not bypassing the order. It's not changing the order. That is what we call intelligent living. You understand the laws and you get the laws to work for you. Smart. Intelligent interventions. So this is a prayer. That is wonderful, right? Because otherwise it almost seems as though somebody is going to, oh my God, so that please, the Ishvara, generally we are so used to relating Ishvara as an entity which is separate from us and it has more power than us. And when you come to Vedanta, slowly, you have to give up this idea of Ishvara. That's why I have to keep reminding you that Ishvara, the definition is Sarvajnaha Sarvashaktiman, the knowledge and power from which the entire manifestation comes. Every form comes, all the laws come, by which everything is sustained and unto which everything moves. So the laws, the intelligence and its manifestations can't change for you, but you have to understand them and help yourself within that.
The help is sent in some form or the other or through some event.
Yeah, exactly. Wonderful.
What I like most on prayer is that it helps me personally in a psychological way. It's a release. I give up something. I'm not alone and have to burden all on my shoulders.
Yes,
I can say, please help me.
Yeah.
So I'm sure there are also some scientific researches on this that
Unloading.
that people have more joy in their life or more
Lighter.
Exactly.
Exactly. When you unload your helplessness, it is very liberating actually.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very good. Christoph.
Yeah, I just wanted to ask the words that you use, sattva, could you explain them a little bit more?
Yeah, I will, in the teaching it will come. In
Yes.
detail it will come.
Okay.
Yeah, it will come in detail. So I will explain. Okay. Sajid, you want to say something?
Just that you spoke about healthy self-esteem on the first day, and you'd also spoken about peaks and troughs, the highs and lows, in the context of manas and emotion, and everything which you've been telling us about the mind and the speech and our senses and all. And I was reflecting and thinking about how. In terms of the self-esteem, well, either there is I'm not good enough, or there is an inflated, conceited self, which is again a high and a low, both of which are isolating. So, and everything which we spoke of in the value of values, what Anju also spoke about, whether it's vulnerability or conceit, it's either of the extremes of the pendulum, so to speak. So I somehow just put it all together that working with all these is really finding one's way to that healthy self-esteem. And if I connect it to your, well, the graph or whatever you drew on the board yesterday, so it was really about, visually it was about, so you drew the senses and then it just sort of kept culminating into something more, something which is more aware of awareness, if I can put it that way. And how each of these things inside of me actually take away that sense of separateness and clean up the muddy water or whatever it may be towards that. Because what you said about the healthy self-esteem was about it having that equilibrium. So, so everything in the last 2 days somehow fit into that, your model or whatever it is.
Okay, so now we move into technicalities of Shotrasya, Shotra, Manaso, Manana. What is this? Okay. Manaso, Manaha, Yat, Vachaha, Vacham, Sabu, Pranasya, Pranaha, Chakshushaha, Chakshuhu, Iti, Amunchya, Viraha, Veku, Asman, Lokan, Amritaha. So the question which was asked is, what is that? Is there anything, is there any presence which makes because of which my eyes do their job, my ears do their job, my mind does its job? Is there a presence? And what was the second question? If there is a presence, what is the nature of that presence? That was the question. So what was the answer? Yes, there is a presence. What is the nature of that presence? It is Shotrasya Shotra. So that means it is that because of which the ears can do their job. Right? And there is that because of which the eyes can do their job. So what we saw is that whether the ears hear different sounds, right? So in one day, how many different sounds, even when I'm speaking different sentences, actually I'm creating sounds, right? What is epistemology? Epistemology is these sounds have the power to convey meaning. It's interesting. Otherwise, these are just sounds. And that meaning, your brain can pick up and it can understand. It's a wonder. So that means, what we say is that the ear's job is to produce, collect different sounds. The eye's job is to collect different forms, images. The sense of touch to different sensations of touch. Then the taste is different sensations of taste, and nose is different smells. Each of them, only for one person, they are variable. They are all variable. Hundreds of sounds we hear, hundreds of images we see, hundreds of smells we come across. There is one presence which allows us to hear all the different sounds, hear all the different images, and that is what we call awareness, chit. Without which neither the sound can be heard, nor the images can be seen, nor the smells can be smelled. So that means there is this one presence. So now, first we did that with reference to our body. Please understand. So there is one presence which is not replaceable. Please, there are two things that we saw with reference to ourselves, right? That the sounds come and go, the images come and go, the smells come and go. That presence which is irreplaceable, as because of which not only you hear sounds, but you also see the images, also because of which you smell everything, it is irreplaceable. Other things are variable, if this presence, which is awareness, is invariable. The second thing that we saw is that the attributes of sounds don't stick to this awareness. The attributes of the images that you see don't stick to this awareness. The attributes of smells, they don't stick to this awareness. So that means without which none of them can be seen, but itself is free from anything that takes place. This is a very important thing that you need to understand. Itself is free from attributes. Right? Now, suppose I do it with reference to myself, and Anna does it with reference to herself, and Ruxandra does it with reference to herself. We all come to what we call attributeless awareness. Just as it is true for me, it is also true for her, and it is also true for her. Now, the next question is, how many awarenesses are there? So that means, what will happen is, suppose you say, oh, let Anne's awareness is, okay, yeah, it's because of which she can do her functions, right? And Ruxandra's awareness is that because of which her organs operate, her mind operates, she comes to see what is happening. So let them all be different, suppose. Because what Upanishad says, there is one awareness. Suppose you postulate the opposite and you suppose that there are different awarenesses. What is the problem? You will get into logical contradictions and you have to see it. Suppose Anne's awareness is different from my awareness. Anne's awareness will become an object for me. Object means it is within time and space. And object by definition has attribute. Please understand. There is no object without attribute. So that means now I will ask you, which attribute will you give to awareness? Show me. You cannot give an attribute to awareness. So that means there is only one thing which does not fall in object category. It is because of which all the objects are seen, heard and thought of. Without its presence, none of these operations are possible. So that means every time you postulate something which is not what Vedanta is saying, then you get into a logical fallacy. Do you understand that? So this attributelessness is a very big argument. I want to strengthen it a little bit further because it may seem a little bit, what does it mean, attributelessness? So I want to show a little bit, use a little bit of further analysis to make you see what attribute means and what attributelessness means. Okay? So in this universe, when it is what we call, how do you define universe?
Scheme of things.
Okay, scheme of things, wonderful.
Time, space, and all objects.
Excellent. That's a you can't go wrong with that definition. Time, space, and within time and space, all the different objects. Okay? This is what we call universe. Okay. Now, in this, now what is right now? What is the question? All these, these eyes and mind, and these are all the different objects. And he says, what is that? Because of which the objects are what they are, and because of which the objects engage in other objects. Do you understand? The eye, which itself is an object, that engages in forms, which is yet another object. Do you understand that? So what is that which allows, without whose presence, this transaction is not possible? Do you understand? Okay. Now, one thing that you need to understand, the object categories, what distinguishes one object from the other is what we call the attributes. So that means when I say that why is my body different from Ekaterina's body? Why? Because the attributes of my body are different. Do you understand that? So my height is different, my color is different, my weight is different, everything is different. So this is what we call attributes with, so that means there is no, you cannot say one thing is an object and it doesn't have an attribute. Do you understand? See, the attributes are of different types. There are, in Sanskrit, when we use the analysis, we use three kind of attributes. One is what we call sajatiya bhedaha. Jati is short or Dirgha or rasva? Sajatiya bhedaha. The other one is vijatiya bhedaha. Okay, sorry, I'm writing in Sanskrit because later on somebody can write it. And this is what we call swagataha bhedaha. Somebody can write in English. Okay? What is sajatiya bhedaha? This is very, very important. All the objects, including time and space, belong to this category. You have to understand this properly. Okay? So, what we call, these all show attributes. Sajatiya bhedaha, what it means is, there is one group. Suppose I say tree group. Yeah? So within that group, are there differences or not? Yes. So that means it's all one similar group, which is what we call tree group. Within that, there are how many different kinds of trees? There is a mango tree, there is a banana tree, there is a chiku tree, right? So that means what distinguishes mango from chiku tree? Different attributes. Please understand. The fruit there, even though both are sweet, one has different taste, different color, different size. This is what we call attributes. So that means within one group, which is a tree group, you will have what? Different
subgroups.
Subgroups, exactly. And these subgroups are based, the only way you can have subgroups are based on attributes. There is no other way to distinguish one thing from the other. Okay? Then you can have a Vijatiya Bhedaha. What does Vijatiya Bheda mean? It means that this tree group is different from animal group. Do you understand? So that means it's a different group altogether. These are the differences within the group. Sajatiya Bhedaha. Vijatiya Bheda is what? One group is different from other group. So what it means is the characteristics, the attributes of tree are different from attributes of animals. Do you understand? So that is why this is what we call Vijatiya Bheda. And this is how the objects, we can say there are millions of objects, they all have their specific attributes which distinguish them from other objects. The third kind of difference is Svagataha Bhedaha. Within one object there is what we call differences. What does it mean? One body, how many parts? Within one unit, there are differences. You understand? Kidney is different from liver. Liver is different from intestine. So that means even within one unit, there are what we call differences. You understand? So this is differences in one unit. So one unit itself is consisting of different parts, and each part has different attribute. You can't confuse liver from kidney. Why? Because there are different attributes even though they exist within one body. So what it means is something which is very, very important. You cannot, suppose I call Ekattina's awareness as an object, it must have attributes. There is no object possible without attributes. So this attributeless argument is a very strong argument. It's not a loose argument. Because that's why what is very important to understand is you cannot find the attributes belong to the body, which is an object. The attributes belong to the mind, which is an object. The attributes belong to objects of the world. The presence because of which all the different objects are known itself is free from the attributes, and attributeless thing cannot be two. Now, if you are really smart, you will ask me, okay, so all the objects have attributes, but what about space? Right? So that means, see, this is Vedanta. Even if you don't have questions, they will raise questions. And they will answer the questions so that there is no opportunity to make any mistake. Your logic, and even if your logic doesn't reach, it will raise the logic and it will answer it. This is the strength of Vedanta. Nothing in Vedanta is loose, just hanging there, unanswered. So that means, now, what about space? Space doesn't seem to have attributes, right? Doesn't seem to have attributes. And there is a big discussion in Taittiriya Upanishad where Adi Shankaracharya distinguishes what is the difference between space and awareness.
Accommodation.
Wonderful. So what does it mean? Tell me. What does it mean?
Space accommodates all objects.
Yeah. So
So
how
there
is
is
it
a-
different from awareness?
Yeah.
Or is it?
It's different because awareness accommodates space, you could say.
Okay, great. Wonderful. Okay, so if you follow this model, what your logic is right, but if you follow this model, can you use this model to use this?
No.
No. Okay. Actually, you can. Try. Okay. Stefan.
Can you say this is room space, this is lake space or river space?
There are
So
many
this is
spaces
paper
inside
space,
Gatakash, Mathakash. Spaces also are different. One is inside, one is outside body.
Is there many different spaces?
But they are just
So
broken.
they seem like different, but actually it's one
They are not.
space which accommodates
The
everything.
space is not changed if you remove an object or you put
Exactly.
an object with
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I was going to say, what about without awareness, there can be no space?
Okay, that's true. But that's correct. But I think both what Christoph said and Andre, they say it's correct. What they are saying is right. But at the same time, if you use this, please understand, if you use within this, the space has Vijatiya Bheda. Space is not an object. Do you understand? There is a Vijatiya Bheda. Whereas awareness is distinct from space, time, and every object in it without which none of them can exist, but itself is free from it, attribute free. So that means it's one of the things in the universe. Space is different from objects that exist in space. Do you understand? So even though in itself has no attribute as such, accommodates everything, but what it accommodates is different from what it accommodates. Do you understand?
Can we use the word comparison? Like what you're saying, space, everything is accommodated in the space. So again, there's a distinction because there is space, like this blackboard is there, it is space, and you have written, but it is limited. But we can compare, okay, this is the space. So can we use the word comparison in attribute? When you compare your body and her body, can we use the word comparison?
See, what I'm trying to say is that all this, anything that is there in the universe, must have what these differences. Sajatiya Bheda, Vijatiya Bheda, and Swadata Bheda. So when you're talking about, there is only one thing from which all this comes. And that one thing has to be basically free from all three attributes. Svajatiya Bheda, Vijatiya Bheda, and Swagata Bheda. Why? Because if it had one attribute, it cannot manifest as, a river cannot manifest as mountain. In order for something to manifest as both river and mountain, intrinsically it has to be free from both. This is logic. If one thing is intrinsically red, it cannot become blue. If one thing has to appear as both red and blue, it itself has to be free from both. This is what we call logic. So only one reality which is attributeless, from which can come what? All the different things of different attributes. If that reality had one attribute, it cannot manifest as object with other attribute. Do you understand the logic?
Yes, sir.
Okay, you have to get your logical powers a little bit sharpened. Because these are logics. I can't do anything about it. Right?
So the objects, they have all these attributes, these three groups.
Exactly.
And so there is only one.
Space is actually, even though itself accommodates everything, what is important to understand. There is a Sajatiya, Vijatiya Veda. Why? Because suppose you can say that the space accommodates all of us in it, right? But can I say I am space? No. So that is Vijatiya Veda. So space is even though it accommodates us all, it is not me. So this is why there is a Vijatiya Veda. So anything in the universe is going to have what? Either Sajatiya Veda, Vijatiya Veda or Swagata Veda. The only one thing which is not within this is what? Awareness.
Can you also say that no other object besides space can accommodate another object?
Sorry?
All objects are accommodated in space.
Yes.
But no object other than space can accommodate any other object. Like the
Okay,
chair
I see
cannot-
what you mean.
Yeah, the chair cannot accommodate the table. But space accommodates all objects.
Okay, so
it's
it has
different.
a distinguishing attributes, right? There is nothing else in the, I think, I like what Christoph is saying. What Christoph is saying is, the so-called attribute of space is that which accommodates everything. And it distinguishes it from everything else because there is no other object which accommodates everything. That's also a good argument. Good.
So if I just take what he said a step further, then space is another kind of object.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So what she is saying is that space is not outside the universe. You see, it is within the universe, and it's even though it is of a different characteristic altogether, but it still is within the universe. Now, the question is, what is that because of which all of these do their job?
Sorry,
you understand?
can we stop just one moment? I think we have lost a little bit these three distinctions. So, is it clear for everybody that space has only Vijati Veda? So, then it means it doesn't have Sajati Veda, right? And
Because
it doesn't
there is no second space.
There is no second space. And does it have Swagata Veda space?
No.
Because it doesn't have parts or limbs.
Yes.
So that is clear, absolutely clear for everybody.
And time is time also.
Time. It is similar to time, right? So that means Sajatiya Veda, as the Surya is saying, right? This tree, you can have Sajatiya Veda. Why can you have Sajatiya Veda? Because there are more than one tree. What Surya is saying is, space cannot have Sajatiya Veda. Why? Because there is only one space. You understand? The body can have Swagata Veda because it is made up of parts. Space is only one thing which is actually not made up of parts. As Stefan and Mrinalini were saying, it may seem like the space has many different parts, like pot space, room space, whatever, glass space. But in reality, are these real? Are they real attributes of space? No. So they are what? There is only one space in which all of them exist actually. They seem to give attributes to space, but actually what space is never ever taking an attribute. So space is one unique so-called object within the universe which has no Sajatiya Veda, no Swagata Veda. The only Veda it has is what Surya is saying, it is Vijatiya Veda. What space is not the table, space accommodates table, but table is not space. So that means that is what we call Sajati, Vijati and Swagata Veda. So anything that exists within time, space and object framework, which is called universe, has to have one of the three. If you make the statement that your awareness is different from my awareness, then your awareness becomes an object. Do you understand? If it becomes an object, it must have any of the three. The attribute 3 cannot have what? Attribute 3 cannot be within this category. Do you understand? Is it clear?
And it is by definition limited.
Sorry?
And it is by definition limited.
It is, exactly, this by definition is limited because it is within time-space framework and it is an object. By definition it is limited.
So objects we can like taste, we can touch, we can see, so it's quite easy for us to, to understand what's that. And the space, we need to find some examples how to deal with it, how to see it. And time, so we can do something logically as well to understand. So, but the awareness, it's even more difficult to find.
This is why
how to experience it.
Exactly. So this is why you have to bring back what I said. If you're trying to experience awareness as an object, you'll never get there. This whole orientation has to go. Anything that you have known so far, I put in a lot of time in it. Anything that you have known so far, the only way you have known is through objectification. So when I talk about awareness, your natural tendency of the mind is what? To objectify. But that's not the way you are going to ever get it. It is because of which, this is why. The first question is what? Not what I can see with my eyes, not what I can hear. What is it which makes my eye see what? All the different objects. Do you see that? That itself is never available for objectification. That's why you need an independent means of knowledge. So everything is connected. Do you understand?
We have to find the instrument, how to see it, because we don't have this instrument.
No.
If we see it, then it's not
No.
No, I mean to know this.
No, it is always, please understand, it is swataha siddha. Please come back to what I said. Because if you don't come back to what I said on the first day, second day, and you don't put it together, you'll never get it. So that means that I spent a lot of time explaining, and it's good, ask me those questions. The only thing in this universe which doesn't require objectification, but you still know it exists, is I am. Why? Because it is self-revealing. You don't need to produce it by any instrument. By definition, you cannot produce. The minute you produce it by any instrument, it will become an object.
Ma'am, with this,
One minute. So that means there is one self-revealing presence in whose presence everything else is known, but itself is something which is not an object, because of which every object, whether it is the smell or touch or forms, it is known. So that means it is something which is self-revealing. Now, what is the problem? You can say, if it is self-revealing, then why should I have Vedanta? Because of Adhyasa. Put back everything. Because if you don't put back everything together, then you will struggle with Vedanta. Why will you not, so where is the Adhyasa? Adhyasa is this self-revealing presence is mixed up with objects. Wonderful. What kind of objects? It is mixed up with the characteristics of the body. It is mixed up with characteristic of mind. So the words of Vedanta, what is the job they do? They separate, exactly. They separate through methodology. It makes you see what is this self-revealing presence and what else is all which falls within the category of objects. Do you understand? Within time, space and objects which all have attributes.
So it means that we can see and understand myself, like the self, but we don't know how to live properly. I mean, in terms of the not health mind.
Okay. What it means is that which is without any attributes, which is all pervading, which is your true nature, you have somehow limited it extremely by your body and mind, by joining with it the characteristics of body and mind. which makes you live with terrible limitations. And as a result of that, you can say, yeah, so what? Okay, so what that it gets so-called confined and I live with a mistaken identity. That mistaken identity has its cost. What is the cost? The cost is you become mortal. Why? Because the body and mind is designed in a way that it is going to go. It is going to go through diseases, it's going to go through emotional traumas, it is going to go through old age and all the functions deteriorate. And while you are living so many things will happen which will not happen according to your wishes. So what happens is you keep on, you make the first initial mistake. And as a result of that first initial mistake, you make so many subsequent mistakes. Do you understand that? So what we are trying to do is, instead of correcting the subsequent mistake, we are trying to come to the root cause of that mistake and we are trying to undo that mistake.
Can we use the same arguments for time?
Yeah, we can use the same arguments for time. Can you give? Try to do it.
So try to say how time is also an object.
Yeah, exactly. So which of the three categories it will fall into? I think as Surya did. Can you say that time has Sajatiya Bheda?
No.
No. Why not?
Because it's just time.
Exactly. The units may be different. The units may be different. Whether it will be one time which you can see from different units, but there are no two different times. Please understand, there is only one time and space framework within which there are many different objects, right? So that means the units could be different, but so therefore, for time, there is no Sajatiya Bheda. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Is there a Swagata Bheda?
Well, I don't know. I mean, you could say there are seconds and nanoseconds and...
What you can say is, Swagata Bheda, I mean, it depends upon how you look at it. If you really look at time as such, I don't think that you can say Swagata Bheda, but you can still say that the time experienced in America right now is different from the time that is experienced in India, or time in some other outside space. So maybe, but it's just in terms of unit. But it is only in terms of unit.
Yes.
Exactly. Absolutely. It's only in terms of the units that we follow there are differences, but there are no really different times as such. Right? So therefore, there is no...
to events.
Exactly.
It's always in relation to events. So events are obviously seasonal.
So
it's in relation to concepts, all concepts that we have regarding time.
okay. Now, what is Vijatiya Bheda? Vijatiya Bheda, does the time have? Yes, absolutely. Time is not table. that is what we call Vijatiya Bheda. What does Vijatiya Bheda mean? It belongs, it's this, it is not that. So the animal is not tree, right? That is what we call Vijatiya Bheda. So that means the time itself has what we call Vijatiya Bheda. Time is not crystal, right? So that means what we call time is different from the objects that are within time. So therefore, whether it is time, space or object, they will have one of these, what we call attributes. The one reality from which all of this comes itself has to be what? Attributeless. Attributeless. And this is what we saw when we did this inquiry. Come back. What is the inquiry we saw? We said the sounds that we hear are many. There is a presence of awareness which is, because of which we can hear all the sounds, itself is free from the attributes of the sound. Bring it all together. Because if you don't bring it all together, Vedanta is very difficult to fathom. the, the forms are many, but the awareness without which no forms can be seen, itself cannot have any given forms. And what is the logic? As Andre was trying to explain, I didn't quite understand his example. But my example, I find it easier to understand, which is what that the cow goes. If awareness had taken the attributes of cow, the next time you will not be able to see horse as it is, free from cow. Do you understand? How many thoughts have gone by? If your awareness had imprinted all these different things, right now you'll not be able to see anything because all the impressions got stuck to that awareness. So that means there is one presence which is a self-revealing presence, because of which all these different objects do their job. Itself is attribute free. And that attribute free is true for me, it is true for you, it is true for you, and that attribute free doesn't fall in this category. It is the truth of all of this. I tell you, Vedanta is ingenious. It is ingenious. Okay, now.
Question, but you say that Vijati, space and time are Vijati related because they're unlike anything, but awareness is also unlike anything.
Yeah, but the thing is, no, in fact, there is what we call Satya-Mithya relationship. There is a very different relationship. It is not Vijatiya Veda, not at all. If it was unlike everything, then what it is like what I would say, you will create an image. You will create an image which is a disaster. This is awareness, this is everything else. Then it will be Vijatiya Veda. We are showing that there is what? Satya-Mithya relationship. None of these can exist without awareness. Awareness is free from them all. From which comes all of this, by which all this is sustained, unto which everything goes. There is no Vijatiya Veda. Otherwise it will become an object. This is why it is the truth of everything, and it's free from everything.
Even the fact that you can see these differences, you mean, goes to show that it is attributeless.
So that means don't make that mistake of separating awareness from everything else, because that's what people end up doing.
Yesterday you did mention that there's no physical separation between the mind and the awareness. And yet it is is unattached.
There is no space between awareness and
Excellent. There is wonderful. So the two objects, wonderful. The two objects are separated by space. But there is not that everything is there and everything is separated from awareness by space. That will make awareness an object different from everything. Then it will have, as Timur is saying, Vijatiya Veda. We are not talking about that.
Ma'am, one thing.
Yes.
I think with this inference, like her awareness and my awareness, they are not different. Means the awareness of everybody, means including all these things, a single awareness.
Superb. This is what Upanishads are trying to show you. Wonderful. Because that awareness, which is common to all, is not available for objects. And everything that we do is only what? Through the senses. So that's why Vedanta shows you that self-revealing reality, because of which all the objects are known, itself is free from all of this. And it's only one, attribute-free awareness. Is it clear?
Yes.
So please follow these logics. I know that they are not easy. For somebody who's not used to these kind of logics, it is tough. I totally understand. But just think about it, because suppose you tell me, I don't understand, but there's only little I can do, but just to use certain logics to make you see. So think about it.
The text will continue. Anyway, the whole text is now going to go in the detail of all this. Okay?
Every logic may not be totally clear to you, so you need to think about certain logics. Because suppose you tell me that this logic is not clear, the only thing I can do is to tell 1 or 2 times, but after that I can't keep telling. So you just have to think about it. It requires certain thinking about it. So please don't take any offense. I mean, there's only this much that I can do as a teacher, make it as clear as possible, but after that, it's not something which you can understand. I have an instrument to make you understand everything all at one time. So that means it requires a certain reflection, right? And it takes time. So it takes time. So in Vedanta class, this is how it is, So when I sat in the class, so many things went about me for a long time. But what could I do? I can't go to Swamiji and say, Swamiji, now please make me, because, hey, he's making it as clear as possible. After that, he doesn't have any magic, right? So even if you don't get all the logics, relax. And even if it doesn't matter, because nobody's mind can reach all the logics like that, just like that. It takes time. But please don't start giving yourself a message of inadequacy. It's okay that vulnerabilities that Andre was saying, it's okay. And I'm not any less because I didn't follow one logic, it's okay. But let me think about it. And there's no human being who's not capable of following it in time. But nobody can also force it immediately. Okay? So just relax and listen and just try to capture and reflect. And when you say that you don't understand, ask me specifics of what you don't understand. Then I can answer that.
When we reflect, we become very quiet. Absolutely sad. What do you say now?
Because see, what I said is connected to what I said on the first day. What I said now is connected to what I said on the second day. So if you want to understand what I'm saying, your mind has to what? Hold everything together. That's not easy. And plus follow all the logics. It's not easy.
And sometimes someone asking helps, because
exactly.
Yesterday I thought that I understood. But then when she asked and you explained again, I realized that there was a little I didn't say. So
that is wonderful. Please don't, we as an individual, we constantly feel, oh my God, inadequate. Give up your inadequacies. As a teacher, sometimes I say things because I'm like, but I don't mean anything for anybody. I just want you to understand. At the same time, you have to give yourself a time. Don't give yourself a hard time if you don't follow everything that I say. Don't tell, oh my God, I can't get it. Oh my God, I don't get it. That's okay. Any advanced learning takes time, right? It takes time. No problem in that.
Ma'am, you said we make first one mistake.
Yeah.
And then the other mistakes follow.
Excellent. So what I'm going to do, wonderful. Okay, that question allows me to join in with Stefan's question which he asked 2 days ago. And I told you, yes. Wait, right?
And I think of my question.
Oh, wow.
Because I was going to ask you about the Satyamithya thing.
Okay.
And how to link it with fire.
Wonderful. Okay, so that's what we are going to do. So now, what is important for you to understand? So first, where have we come? We have come up to now to the point that there is one attributeless awareness, which is by definition it cannot be two. Right? So by definition it cannot be true because two implies attributes. Whether it is Sachatiya, it is Vijatiya, or it is Swagata. Do you understand? Okay, good. Now,
just to hear the question. But time and space as well, it's not like two.
Huh?
Space?
Yeah, space and time, they were combined. Okay, yeah. Space and time.
How to make the,
sorry?
How to make difference between space and awareness here in this.
Yeah, so that's what I'm trying to do.
Vijatiya.
Okay. Now, what up to now, so that's why we have to go step by step, right? So, up to now what we have seen is that the eyes are doing their job. Please bring back the verses. The mind is doing its job, having hundreds of different thoughts, right? All of these are different, and my mind is different from your mind. But there is one thing in whose presence all of this taking place, and itself doesn't get affected by the quality of engagement. You understand that? And that can only be one. It cannot be two awareness. Okay? That's what we have seen so far. Now, but that still doesn't make it limitless, because suppose I told you there is this awareness which is different from all this, the time, space and objects, then it is still, as what Timur was saying, it will become what Vijatiya Vedanta. It is still different. So now, it still then will still be limited. You can say it is distinct from body, mind, sense and all the objects and things like that, but it still will become limited because it is different from everything else. Now, what we need to understand is, while awareness is free from all of this, this is dependent on awareness. Then Satya-Mithya relationship is a very critical relationship which establishes oneness and limitlessness, without which this analysis is not complete. Okay? So now we have to come back. What we have done so far, it's an ingenious methodology. Now what we have done is said awareness is distinct from all of this, but without this, none of these can actually do their job. Now we are trying to see the relationship between awareness and objects. So you take any tangible object. So you start with the table, right? So now, what is this table? It seems like a distinct entity from awareness. It seems like it, right? Awareness is one thing and the table is other thing. Now, Satya-Mithya relationship, you have to establish another relationship. So what you need to do is, this table, which seems so solid and so tangible, is what, yes, empirically it is true. Empirically it's true. Nobody is saying it's an illusion, nobody is saying it's false, but it has a, what we call, dependent reality. So that means Satya-Mithya relationship is a critical thing which you need to understand for entire Vedanta to fall in its place. So, Satya-Mithya relationship. Satya is defined. Anything, everything has a definition. Satya means that which has an independent existence.
Take another pen.
Mithya is that which has a dependent existence. Okay? So, the dependent existence is, we have to, first let me define this, and later on I will do even further more analysis to answer your two questions. Okay? Let's first start with this. The table, which seems like a real tangible object, when I look at the reality of this table, it is actually nothing but what? Wood. There is a Satya-Mithya relationship for the time being between what? Table and the wood. Why? Because it may seem as though there are two things. One is table and the other one is wood. But in reality, what is there is? Only wood. Why? Because if I take away the wood, what will remain as a table? So that means, then why can't we just call it a wood? Why do we have another word called table?
Forms.
Excellent. Because the wood may not be always as table, it can be a chair. So that means there are different forms, and those forms have different attributes. For that you have different names. Wonderful. There is no problem with that. So that means that this you still can call table, the other thing you can still call chair. You can call the wooden, if there is a wooden door, you can call it door, because there are different forms. But all these different forms are different, but the substance is only one, which is the wood. What is the relationship between table and wood? While the table entirely depends upon wood for its existence, wood is independent of being the table. What does it mean? Even after I demolish the table, the wood still remains, right? And the wood can, if I call a carpenter, he can make a totally different shape of that wood. So that means right now the entire table is pervaded by wood. Pervading the entire table, wood is free from being the table. Because it was there before the table was born, so-called came into manifestation. While the table is there is actually nothing but wood. And after the table goes, the wood will survive. So that means that relatively what we call is wood right now, for the time being, gets which status? Satya. And the table is Mithya. But the Vedanta is certainly not to tell you table is Satya, right? So the wood is. So the wood itself, now, if I ask you, what is the wood? Atoms. So that means the wood, if I take out the atoms, what will remain as an object wood? So that means the wood itself becomes mithya, and what for the time being becomes satyam is what? Atoms. The atoms themselves are nothing but particles. So now without particles there is no atom. So now the atom itself becomes mithya, and what becomes satyam? Particles. Now if you go to quantum physics, what they will say is they have labs. What they do in these labs, there is one in Switzerland and there is one in Chicago, very famous labs. I forgot the names.
CERN in Geneva.
CERN in Geneva, yeah. What they do is they send the particles at very high speed to break the particles and see what is the building block of that particle itself. So that they come up with things which is what they call quark and things like that. But at that level, please understand, there is not anything tangible. It all becomes mathematics. There is no real object that you really visualize. And so that's why even quantum physics is interesting. At that level, what they say is that generally we are used to thinking about particle is particle which has a mass, and the wave is that which is which moves, right? And then it has motion, right? Now, at the quantum physics level, that distinction between particle and wave becomes all very fuzzy.
Interconnected.
Yeah. So that means there are no tangible objects anymore remaining. So ultimately, it all becomes this table. Please understand. And now, from this tangible table, when I inquire into the truth of the table, it becomes what? Forms within forms, within forms, within forms, within forms, and there is the final building block. It's just all just concepts. So this is where up to now the science can go, and it can show you, the quantum physics can show you that ultimately the things are very fuzzy. Now,
but they also showing it has intelligence.
Wonderful. So
It's
in
also
fact,
showing that it has
yes.
intelligence.
Yeah. Now let's not, because we need to understand, I need to show it.
Changes its course.
Yeah.
It can get confused.
That's okay. So we need to first come to this, understand the nature of awareness. From there we have to go to Ishvara. So it's all very systematic. So right now if you mix everything, it becomes difficult to understand. Right? Yeah. Well, Shirin, you had a question?
No, I was going to make things more difficult.
Okay. So because what happens is, when you do this kind of sophisticated inquiry, everything into one, then it becomes difficult. This is why we call methodology. Methodology means you have to move from one step to the other till everything becomes clear. That's why you have whole Upanishad. In one class, I can't talk about everything, right? So it has a certain way of moving. So we have to right now restrict ourselves to understanding awareness, Sat, Chit, Ananda. Then we can talk about Ishvara, the Sarvagyaha Sarva Shaktiman. Because if you mix up everything, it becomes too difficult.
Ma'am,
Okay?
it's in hand that science can tell you that wood, object and quantum physics, but it cannot go beyond to reach
Excellent.
awareness.
Wonderful. Why? Because if you remember in the first class when I said the entire science is through what? Where is the data coming from? Through senses. You have to bring it all together. If you don't bring it together, your mind goes from here to there. So it is, by definition, it has no access. Why? Because it only works within the time, space and object universe. And here we are trying to understand that from which the entire thing has come. Shotrasya shotram, manaso manaha. Right?
Quantum's
but it has
quantum.
to reconcile. But it has to reconcile. So that means what they cannot find, which is what, they don't know what, but it is just a concept. So what Vedanta says is that this concept, now, so what the object category has reduced to concept, right? Any object, you replace table with tree. Same story, atoms, particles, concept. Human body, same, cells, atoms, particles, concept. Mountains, same, atoms, particle, concept. So that means, yes, there are many, many different objects. There is no doubt about it. But if you begin to look at the truth of these objects, they all have dependent reality, forms within forms, within forms, within forms. And then there is one, what? Then there is no end when it all reduces to concept. So that means when you do it with reference to all the objects of the universe, they all are reduced to concept. Okay, so he has asked me to change one. So the objects are reduced to concept. What about time? Time, sorry?
It's still a concept.
It's still a concept. Why?
You can break it down indefinitely.
Absolutely. You can break it down indefinitely.
It's a distance between two events.
That is space. So that means everything exists in time, but actually what is time, if you begin to think about what is time, so what we do is we come up with units, right? Units to kind of capture time. So that means for our convenience, the class starts at 9 and it closes at 10:30, unfortunately. So I'm saying saved. This is a time and space relationship. Next class. So that means 9 o'clock is a unit that we create so that all of us are here, hopefully by 9, except for me, I come at 9 or 5. So 9 o'clock is a unit, right? So that is 1 hour, that given hour. That hour is itself what? 60 minutes. And it goes on. And 1 minute is 60 seconds. And that 1 second is microsecond, nanosecond. So that means it goes on reducing further and further. So that means what is the final building block of time? Even that collapses, and that also becomes concept. What about space? So as Brunalini was saying, generally, yes, of course, we can go into Einstein's theory of relativity and relativity of time and space, but neither I have the skills nor I think you have. So let's follow the Vedic way of looking into space. And generally, as what she's saying is, generally the way we understand Christoph's definition of space that accommodates all of us, so what it means is, you occupy that point in space, and I occupy this point in space, and space gives a location, right? And the location is measured in terms of units again. Right? So that means if I ask you, how far am I from Christoph? What will you say?
4 meters.
Huh? 4 meters. Okay. So now, again, 1 meter is how many centimeters?
100 centimeters.
100 centimeters. 1 centimeter is
10 millimeters.
10 millimeters. 1 millimeter is
not there on the scale.
Not there on the scale, right? So you don't even know. So that means even the distance, when you actually try to find the distance, what it goes from units within units within units within units, there is no finality about it. Now, these mathematicians are brilliant. What they say is, suppose there is a finite distance of 4 meters between me and Christoph. That whole distance is, suppose I create dots. How many dots are required?
You don't know.
Infinite points. So that means that can be further divided, that can be further divided, it is infinity. So how can infinite dots create a finite distance? It's all mind-boggling. Infinite points, there are no finite points.
Again, it is concept.
So that means, again, a concept.
We can only measure with the limitation of the instrument that we measure with, and it's always limited.
It's always limited. Exactly. So that means everything, the entire universe that I see has reduced to the object. One object looks very different from the other. The time and space within which the objects exist are different from all the objects that they accommodate, but all of them reduce to a concept.
Concepts are mental image or?
No, wonderful. The concepts are not just, they are not only dependent upon your mind. But as I said, the observation, when I look at that object, there is something which is totally intangible, but it must have, every effect must have a cause. But itself is undefinable. So it's just a concept, but it's there. You can't have something coming from nothing. It's not possible. Logically, it's impossible.
So could we say that objects, concepts are only due to ignorance and our...
No, let's not.
I mean,
no, let's not get into that, because then everything becomes only ignorance, and that's not really. So let's stick to what I'm saying. right? Let's stick to what I'm saying. Later on we'll come to what is ignorance, what is Maya, all that is very involved discussion. So let's not introduce things that we have not yet seen, because otherwise it becomes overwhelming. Okay? So now, the entire universe is reduced. It's not just a mental concept. Do you understand? It is something, it itself, even if you're not thinking about it, you can't come to finality about the object. That's what it means. Right? But it must have a cause, even though it's something which cannot be seen. That's what is meant. Right? Because if it is mental concept, it becomes very, very flimsy. Do you understand?
So we can find the basic
exactly
from
absolutely.
what it comes from.
Exactly. Absolutely. And what it means exactly.
So we don't have a basic element that we can understand that it's made of. So, for example, the table. What's the basic element that?
What is the independent? What is that final reality upon which the entire dependent reality comes from? That we cannot establish through science. Do you understand that?
But then that appears to be.
Go ahead.
That appears to be one for everything.
Okay, wonderful. I will go into this. Yes, and this is why we are coming to this oneness. Very good. See, this is what actually it's interesting when you look at Vedanta, right? The physics, when you look, it cannot give the answer because it is something which is not an object. And entire science is based on observation, right? The data collection, which is based on observation, but it coincides, it points very, very closely to what Vedanta is saying. It converges, but Vedanta shows something more than what eyes can meet. You see? But there is a convergence, absolutely. Yes, wonderful.
So, whether it's objects or whether it's time or space, even time, just like it's in the awareness that I'm able to see a form and an object, it's also in the awareness that I can get with time and space. How can I sort of understand?
So that is what the next step is. Wonderful. Okay? So now, what is happening is, when I told you that there is a self-revealing presence which is awareness, which is free from attributes, which doesn't belong to object, space and time category. When you have collapsed the whole thing to only concept, now the final answer that you need to, what is left out is what? Awareness, right? Because awareness doesn't belong to this category. Do you understand that? The universe, time, space and object category. So the final question that you need to answer is, what is the relationship between awareness and the entire universe, which is collapsed into concept? Do you understand? So that means, now, that is the final thing. Awareness, now, my pen is not working, and time is over.
Saved by the bell.
Saved by the bell, exactly. Okay, so now wait 1 hour. But this final relationship. Okay? So what is, the next question is, what is the relationship between all this, everything else which is reduced to concept, and only one thing which is not within this category is what? Self-revealing awareness. What is the relationship between awareness and concept? Yeah?
Satya and Mithya.
That will be super. Okay, now you guys know it all.
We try to find the base, yeah?
So exactly.
Instead of concept, we try to find
the base. Exactly. So what is the base? Now you tell me. There are two things remaining. Concept and awareness. So what could be the base? Tell me.
Awareness.
Oh, good. Yay. Okay, so you answered it before I showed it to you. So now Ekaterina and who else? Mrinalini will show us.